It goes without saying at this point that prefabrication or prefab is here to stay and has proven to bring savings, efficiency, and improved safety to the team. Now, that is not to say it's easy and works in every situation, but more and more contractors are figuring out how to make it work for them. I'm a huge fan of prefab, and I wanted to bring someone on the show that can give us the real scoop on how to create a prefab program and the challenges and successes in doing so. In this episode, I'm going to speak with Brian Yetter, prefabrication manager for Hatzel and Bueller.
Brian Yetter is a husband of somebody that I married who is my best friend, a parent of two. I have a 12-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son that I strive to make them become better people than I am or my wife is. I'm a hunter, a golfer. I like to consider myself an athlete, a coach, a motivator.
Hey, welcome to Keeping the Lights On. I'm your host, Todd Reed, and on this podcast, I connect with the owners and pros who design, build, and maintain our electrical, communications, and industrial world to explore the best ways forward. Hey, before we get started, I want to ask you to join our newsletter list. Now, this is a very one-way medium, podcasting, and I'm looking to hear from you more and to get your insights and ideas for future guests and shows. So that's really my goal with the newsletter, is to start hearing from you and give you insights into shows and future show ideas. So click on the link in the show notes to subscribe. You can always unsubscribe if I send too many, which I don't plan on doing. So that would be super helpful. So subscribe to our new newsletter I'm creating. Okay, let's get into the show. So I like to start out each episode, Brian, with the meals that bring us together. So if I or one of the listeners were to visit you in your hometown, where might you take us and why would you choose this place?
I'm going to take you guys to a bar called Mock Scoot Pub and Grill. The atmosphere there is comfortable. You kind of feel at home. They make you feel at home. And I'm a sucker for a good burger, and they have the best burgers in town. So, and their wings are top notch.
Describe your perfect hamburger.
They serve it on a Portuguese roll, and the patty itself has flavor, and lettuce, tomato, onion. Everything's fresh. You could tell you bite into it, and you can just taste the freshness.
Oh,
right?
okay.
It's not like a burger that they're pumping out 50 at every 30 minutes.
Time. Yeah, that's great. All right, so we're going to be talking about. Actually, you made a great point in your restaurant answer. You said they're not making 50 and getting them all assembly line. But we're going to talk about, which makes me think of prefab. Actually, that's a good transition. So Brian, can you describe some of the biggest challenges you've encountered when trying to implement prefab in your projects?
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges in prefab is, early stage communication. The process, demands key decisions to be made much earlier than in traditional construction. But getting clear answers at that stage can be difficult. People are often focused on immediate tasks and may not recognize how much time and rework could be saved with more thorough planning before physical work begins. Another major hurdle is coordination among the different teams that are involved. Information gaps or misaligned expectations can lead to design issues that are much harder to resolve once prefab is underway.
Okay.
Another major hurdle, let's say healthcare projects, particular hospitals, there's a lot of information that flows back and forth between the engineers, the architects, and all parties involved. And it's very easily, a communication gap can very easily be missed by all parties. And to collaborate with all teams and have weekly meetings and just communicate what needs to be done. I feel like it works a little better when we're directly involved with the customer and asking the questions we need to ask, because not everybody's thinking about what we need, right? They're thinking about what they need.
Okay.
And to be honest, the prefab shop, we ask questions that don't necessarily need to be asked, or what people think don't need to be asked right up front. Like we're already
Mm.
asking about colors of devices, and
Oh,
that
right.
stage of the job, nobody's thinking about color of devices, right?
Yeah.
So the old school of building, there's like a stage at where you ask the questions or where you need those answers, and we're just kind of changing that process and asking the questions you usually ask last, and we're asking them first.
Okay. Yeah, that's key. That seems key and different to what people are used to, like you said. So it takes a little bit of shift of thinking. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, how does the timing of contract signings impact your ability to plan and execute prefab?
Timing plays a critical role, for the success of our prefab assemblies. The longer it takes to award a contract, the less time the team has to thoroughly review and resolve the unanswered questions in the drawings. Um, in many cases, we're essentially re-engineering the plans to reflect exactly how everything will be installed in the field, and that process takes time.
Okay.
Um, so, from my experience, the amount of time is directly proportional to the quality of the final installation. So the more time we have up front, the smoother the project will go, the more answers that will be, the more questions that will be answered, and the likelihood of issues down the road, which can affect both performance and schedule. One of the best ways to avoid these problems is by building strong partnerships with our customers. And when we're involved early and work as true collaborators, the outcome is almost always smoother and more often efficient. And for repeat customers, the benefits are even greater, because we have all that data that we
Yeah.
originally put down on the drawings. And, let's say my guy's out in the field and, we're doing a service call later down the road and they need to add a circuit in a specific location of the building. I can go back to my as-built drawings and I can tell them exactly where a junction box is and where that spare circuit would be for them to get. So it saves the customer and it saves us a lot of time and headaches down the road.
Okay. Well, what are some of the communication hurdles that you faced with general contractors and other project partners when introducing prefab methods?
I would say, you know, let's face it, in a job, things happen, materials don't get delivered on time, or other MEP contractors might, the general contractor might think he's got 10 guys there, and he might say he's got 10 guys there, but only has two there. And if, you know, maintaining alignment with the original plan, I would say, in traditional construction, there's often a need to adapt quickly when unexpected issues arise or when materials or information are delayed. While those adjustments are sometimes necessary, they can occasionally shift the project off course and create downstream challenges, especially in the prefab environment. Because when we design a prefab job, we might have 10 steps, you know, on how to assemble that piece of electrical equipment. Well, you can't skip to five and then back to one and then
Yeah.
go to 10. So, um, staying on task and making sure when we create a plan, sticking to that plan.
So, have you noticed any like resistance or misconceptions about prefab from others in the industry, and how do you address those?
I would say the most common hesitation that we encounter often comes from our more experienced team members or somebody that we might have hired that's not used to our process. They'll sometimes say, and I heard this a lot, I can install that faster in the field.
Oh, yeah,
But and while that perspective comes from maybe their years of valuable you know um, years of experience, it it highlights the variety of approaches that exist in the trade. So if I ask 10 seasoned journeymen how they tackle the same task, you might get 10 different answers.
sure.
Um, yet, all thoughtful answers. Many of those approaches work well, but they can vary based on personal style and experience. To support consistency, which is key, and streamline our prefab process, we introduce a dedicated role, and I like to call it the prefab installation specialist.
Oh, okay.
I was actually in the Innovation Institute for the last year,
Okay.
and my capstone project was an installation specialist. So
Oh, okay.
what what his role was is to go out to the field, we trimble all the points, and be kind of a team player that works with the field crew to kind of train them how our designs were intended to be installed. And he would bring back true feedback to us and to our VDC modelers to um, correct issues that or you know problems that arise that we could make faster, better, get our VDC department modeling the way it should be installed. The specialist, he also oversees delivery schedules and ensuring materials arrive when and where they're needed, helping to reduce delays and material waste. Because what we saw was a lot of pieces coming back. And, well, why aren't these pieces being installed? And
Oh,
the
interesting. Okay.
communication got lost there. And, maybe somebody changed something on the site that we didn't know about. And then we're asking the questions, well, why are we building this? And you're sending it back. And, I mean, it didn't happen a lot. But, when we put so much time and effort into designing it, laying out, building it, and watching it leave the facility, we want to know why it's coming back.
Sure.
And if it's coming back for a certain reason, well, then we need to write a change order for that. If something changed, if we built something that we're not installing,
Right.
that obviously there's a cost impact that comes with that. Um, looking ahead, the goal is to grow our foreman into this prefab installation specialist. So not just have a specific role for this, but have all of our foremen be that role.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting having to basically create a new role is what I'm hearing. That's interesting.
It's worked out really well, and
Yeah, great.
a lot of my other team members say it's like the prefab PM.
Yeah. All right. Think about, a famous sports channel that may have a name of ESPN. They always have a highlight reel, right? They like to show at the end of every day. So if you were to run a highlight reel of building this prefab program from beginning to now, what would be like the top 3 highlights to best illustrate the challenges and best steps you took to implement the successful prefab team?
The first highlight would be building the system um, from the ground up. So 11 years ago, my boss at the time called me in his office and he said, "Hey, I want to do prefab, and I want you to run the prefab shop." So he brought me into a little space. At that time, I was running a job. I think it was like an ambulance corps job or something like that. And I'm like, well, what's prefab? So I took this as my opportunity to create my career. And I sat down and I thought about it real hard. Uh, and I just started creating assemblies. From day one, I made it a priority to include input from every department, field, office, and shop. We didn't just we didn't just push a top-down system onto the field crews. Instead, we asked the question, listened, and built a workflow based on their real-world experience. That created buy-in and ownership throughout the whole company or through the field.
Yeah.
When people feel like their voice matters, they're far more likely to contribute and make it work. And more importantly, they help make it better. The second major highlight, a very personal one, was the first time I had, when he called me in his office and he said, "Hey, I want a prefab shop," he gave me the space. I'm thinking, oh man, I gotta fill it up with people. I gotta be productive all day long. And in the beginning, it wasn't as productive as I'd like, but once I figured it out, tweaked my build sheets and got it going, I had 15 guys in there, working in sync, and everybody's got a smile on their face, and it started to change the culture.
Okay.
So everybody, it took, out on a job site, everybody's walking around, and you could be 50 different places. Everybody's together. We're all being safe. We're all joking around. We're all being efficient. When I can look down at the shop floor and just see everybody working together and materials going out the door, it's a manufacturing facility. I turned it into a manufacturing facility, and that was a good feeling.
Yeah.
The third big highlight was when we successfully produced a fully prefabricated turnkey electrical job, and everything from in-wall, MC cable, conduits, feeders, panels, above ceiling. It was seamless, no major issues. the best part of that was I saw less stress on the foreman. Like I said, I was a foreman in the field, and I could see I had a lot of stress back then. And one of my biggest goals was to eliminate some of that stress and have the foreman kind of concentrate on what makes more sense to me in my career now. And that is when people come to work with a smile, I want them to leave work with a smile
Yeah.
and be happy and come ready to work the next day. Um, so, yeah, that would be my three.
What role does collaboration play with your field crew and office team in the success of your prefab operations?
Collaboration is everything. Without buy-in from all departments, field, office, and shop, prefab just doesn't work the way it's meant to. I think prefab brings everybody together, talking, collaborating, bringing new ideas, and setting the culture where innovation is welcomed and not frowned upon. Right. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
with the culture that I'm trying to create is everybody has a voice, whether it's a bad one or a good one. Um, I want to know about it, and if it's something that makes sense, I'm going to try my hardest to incorporate that into what we do moving forward. In many cases, our project managers, they do get it. They understand what we bring to the table and rely on us to help deliver jobs efficiently. But if communication breaks down or if we're not given the right information in a timely manner, the window of opportunity can close, right? So it's a very small window of opportunity. And if you get too far past that window of opportunity, it's too late. So part of my job is to help educate the PMs and office staff on our process and how much time we need for each of those processes and when to engage us. And I've seen that when you engage us early on and you take us to those kickoff meetings and you take us to those collaboration meetings with the GCs and the you know everybody involved, we ask questions that they're not normally used to asking, right?
Right.
So they don't know that, hey, we need to ask this questions because they're not living it day to day like we are.
Right.
And on the field side, it took some time to win people over. There was some skepticism early on, but what helped was like I said, I rubbed elbows with these guys. I was in the ditch with these guys and kind of built our system around everybody's information. So you know once we proved how much easier and faster the prefab and less, the easier their job became, eventually they called us for everything. So, it's not always easy to keep everyone on the same page, especially when things get busy, but putting in the time up front to communicate and align saves a lot of time, stress, and rework later. And that's the key to making prefab a real asset on every job.
All right. We're here at the Nika show and on hundreds of booths here, and there's technology like crazy in the booths and all kinds of new stuff and technology that's been around. So I'm curious how have you leveraged technology, CAD, Revit, who knows, the software. How have you leveraged technology to improve your prefab process?
So, one of my biggest things, if, you know, my boss keeps telling, puts into my head is if you stop growing, you're gonna die, right? So like
Hmm.
in my mind, we have to keep getting better, keep moving forward, keep doing more. What's next, right?
Okay.
So 11 years ago, I started with nothing more than pencils, highlighters, and whiteout, and taking the drawings and manipulating them into what our in-wall assemblies would look like. And I created an Excel spreadsheet and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and that was my gateway into this whole prefab gig. And as I laid out more jobs, I learned by doing, tweaking, testing different approaches, and constantly asking for feedback from the field. Over time, that input helped me develop what became our standard for in-wall prefab because I had collected so much data on what worked and what didn't. It was easier to fine tune the process. Once the standard was in place, I updated our build sheets and stocked our shelves with all the standard materials. Standardizing materials was big,
Mm.
huge for us. Um, Eventually, I got with our, CAD BIM guy at the time, and he took care of like our as-builts, and he was the only one in the company that had CAD, right? So I kind
Oh,
of
okay.
forced myself into it and was able to acquire AutoCAD, and I started doing all my in-wall stuff and learning that and realizing how easy it was.
Mm,
So I took my step one step, closer to being more efficient. And, so I was getting jobs done in half the time. I manipulated my build sheet so that I got quicker and with drop down boxes and
sure.
stuff like that. And off we went there. And then continuing to grow, I eventually got my hands on Revit with like evolved attachments.
Okay.
And once I started drawing conduits in that, it was taking my field brain, because let's face it, I feel like electricians have a different brain than a computer guy or anybody else, because we're all taught a certain way
Sure.
from our apprenticeship how to install and how electricity works and how it should be done and what bends can be done and what bends can't be done. So I took that information and I started drawing, and it was like instant. I was so excited about this. It's like playing a video game and you're creating the rules for that video game,
Oh, that's cool. That's a good way to look at
and I couldn't stop. Like I was obsessed.
it. Yeah.
But and then that just opened up a floodgate of opportunities. So now it's like anything and everything, whatever I could think of, we can build and ship and accomplish.
How do you create that environment where team members feel comfortable, sharing ideas and innovating within the prefab shop?
This is an important question for me, because I coach 10U Little League Baseball,
Okay.
and I relate a lot of my coaching experience to my work life. And believe it or not, 10-year-olds aren't much different than 40-year-olds.
Yeah.
And, I focus on making everyone feel like, they're a real part of the team and showing that their ideas matter. Not every idea will be a home run, and that's okay. But when someone brings something forward that benefits the group, I make sure we put it into action, and that builds trust and encourages people to keep contributing. It's also about building relationships beyond just the work. With my team, every morning we collaborate, we sit around, and I'll ask them, "Hey, what'd you have for dinner last night? What'd you guys do last night?"
Mm,
Just becoming a family. I like to say, well, we're moving into a new facility right now. We're taking two locations. We're moving everybody into one,
oh, okay.
and um, it's a perfect opportunity because we're putting stuff in there that is going to, um, it's going to enhance the collaboration and the.
Okay.
But those little things that help create comfortable environment where people can be themselves, and when people feel safe and valued, they're much more likely to speak up, even if they're not sure their idea is perfect. Um, Ultimately, we're trying to build a culture where work doesn't always feel like work. If I can create that kind of atmosphere where people are engaged, comfortable, and motivated, we'll be unstoppable.
Yeah. All right. Well, so one of the things I hear occasionally are companies that say, prefab's not for us, based on for whatever reason. There's a multitude of reasons. But so if you're here at the show, you're with a lot of different contractors. I'm sure people see you speak or talk or hear you talk about this. What for those people who think prefab isn't for them, especially on smaller jobs, what would you say to encourage them to consider it?
All right. I'm going to say let's think about the big picture. And I'm going to go back to my baseball reference. Um, from what I've seen in my experience, a lot of the younger generation is growing up in a digital world. They're raised on YouTube and video games. Many haven't been taught how to think critically
Mm,
or work with their hands, and they often need very clear direction to complete a task. This isn't a knock on them, it's just a reflection of how times have changed.
sure.
And that shift is going to hit our industry hard if we don't adapt. The cost of installations will rise, and companies that don't evolve will struggle to compete with those that do. Prefab is one of the best solutions we have. It gives the next generation a clear path forward. It removes the guesswork. I often say prefab is like Legos. We're creating the instruction booklet and giving you the materials. You just have to put it together. Now, granted, there's going to be opportunities for those that take the bull by the horns, per se, and want to be part of the design team.
Yeah.
But prefab isn't just about simplifying the work. It's about empowering the right people. If you give someone who's motivated, innovative, and genuinely cares the tools and the trust to succeed, they will rise to the challenge. I believe that. Prefab opens doors. It makes the job site safer, improves efficiency, creates structure in a way that actually helps younger workers learn and grow. They need a path. If they're not provided with a path, or they can't see what's at the end of the tunnel, then it doesn't excite them.
Okay.
So the next generation deserves a real chance to thrive. There's no better time than now, and prefab is the gateway in making that happen.
Okay. I like that. So, Brian, I always like to close out our conversations by refocusing on the why of what you do. So what motivates you to do this day in and day out? What keeps you excited and passionate about what you do?
I go back to being a coach. I really love being a coach and teaching these kids not only how to play baseball, but how to be good human beings and do the right thing. Also, being the best at what I do. Being from a baseball background and a golfer, competitiveness, I always strive to win. And to be really good at something, you have to be a little selfish. And I apologize to my wife because sometimes I don't overlook her, but she'll tell you this. I'm too busy working on something at work, or working on my golf game, or that, something that I can do better is probably take a day here or there off and spend it with her all day. But at the core of it, I'm driven by acceptance. I want people around me, whether it's my company, my family, my baseball team, or anyone I cross paths with, to see me as someone they can trust and look up to. That doesn't mean being perfect. It means being a good person, someone who's dependable, honest, and willing to step up and solve problems when it matters. I take a lot of pride in that. I also truly enjoy the people I work with. When you build a team where people feel valued and can smile together, everything gets a little easier and a lot more rewarding. That's what keeps me excited, the chance to lead with purpose, grow with my team, and create an environment where we all feel like we're part of something bigger.
Thank you so much for taking time to be on the show.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
Yep, thanks. Well, that was my conversation with Brian Yetter, prefabrication manager at Hatzel and Buehler. You can connect with Brian and what he is working on by heading to the links in the show notes. Hey, I want to know, where are you in your prefab journey? What's working for you and what's stumping you? Send me an email at podcast@graybar.com or post up in the comments on YouTube or Spotify. Speaking of leaving comments, this podcasting is a very one-way medium. You're the lucky ones. You get to hear my voice, see me every few weeks. So lucky you. However, I can't easily hear your voice, and I would love to. So I'm looking to change that this year by creating an email newsletter to encourage a more two-way conversation. So click a link in the show notes to subscribe. I don't want to say I'm begging you, but that would be a lie. So I'm begging you, but I'm asking. Please subscribe to the newsletter. You can always unsubscribe if I send too many, which I don't plan on doing, but it would be super helpful, and it would just be a great way for us to know who you are and who's listening to the show and what you want to hear about. So if you enjoyed this specific episode, though, you can help us grow the show by following and leaving a 5-star rating in your favorite podcast player and on YouTube. So thanks for listening to this episode of Keeping the Lights On. We'll see you next time. So Brian, what advice would you give to 18-year-old Brian?
Good question. I would tell my 18-year-old self that attitude is everything. Nothing in life is guaranteed. Everything worth having is earned. Talent and hard work are important, but the right attitude opens the doors and allows you to prove yourself.